What is up, hoop heads? Welcome in to the RotoWire Fantasy Basketball Podcast presented by DraftKings Pick 6. Brandon Kravitz along with Nick Whalen on this fine Tuesday. We were locked in last night, and we had an NFL game. That one was ugly, so it made it a lot easier to focus on all things NBA. Coming up on today's podcast, we're going to hand things off to you for the bounce. Get those questions into the comments section, and we'll wrap today's podcast with a bunch of your thoughts. We had 8 games in the association last night, and cup action back on our screens tonight. Cavs-Celtics, does that take the main screen for you this evening?
Oh, yeah. That's going to be on the main. I mean, it's good night of basketball overall. Like if you're playing fantasy, especially in weekly leagues, you're probably aware that this is not a loaded schedule week. We got a lot of teams with 3 games. We got 4 teams that only play twice. So it's not one of those weeks where, you have this like 13 game night and, 6 games are tipping off at the same time and you're kind of scrambling to catch everything. It's a much more balanced week overall, which is great for basketball consumption. So yeah, we'll be going Cleveland, Boston, of course, on the main TV. Kind of looking forward to Utah and LA in the late window. This Jazz team started to play a little bit better, starting to get looks at guys that I did not think would be playing real minutes for them this season. And, Dalton Connect's been playing well for the Lakers, but fun night of basketball last night too, Brandon. We saw the Milwaukee Bucks rally back for a win against Houston. Your Orlando Magic keep rolling along. They beat the shorthanded Phoenix Suns. The Washington Wizards are just getting blown out by like 15 plus every single night now. Alex and I were talking about that on XM NBA last night, where it feels like every Wizards line is like not in line with every other betting line. It's like 2 or 3 points higher than it should be, but the Wizards just refuse to cover. I think they've now failed to cover 8 of their last 9. They've lost 9 in a row straight up.
Yeah, the Wizards are a great team to bet against if you're just not sure which way to go. I'm going to look this up right now, actually, while we're talking about this. I usually have this bookmarked, but for whatever reason, I did not.
What are we trying to find?
The NBA teams against the spread this season. Washington would be D.
They're 3-10 ATS.
Yeah, they
Brooklyn,
are.
By the way, Brooklyn 10-3-1 ATS, the best cover team in the NBA right now.
Wild.
Yeah.
And of course, Cleveland doing their thing. That's the beauty of Cleveland, is that Cleveland's not only undefeated, but they're making people money on top of it.
Oh yeah.
I'm looking at an alt. I don't usually do this, but I am flirting with the idea of an alt number tonight for the Cavs and the Celtics. I think the Cavs could put it on them here. The Cavs are overdue for a loss at this point.
Yes.
And now they're in Boston, where this team's licking their chops to show Cleveland, like, your start was very cute. Let's show you what real basketball looks like. -10 is plus 165. I think I could go double-digit win for the Celtics tonight at plus money.
I don't hate it. I mean, this feels like Bills Chiefs in some ways, although unlike the Kansas City Chiefs, like the Cavs look the part of an undefeated team, right? They're not just like scraping by and beating teams like 95-92 every single night. I mean, they've had some big time wins already this season, and they will have Donovan Mitchell in the lineup. They won't have Dean Wade, however, Brandon, something to keep an eye on there. We'll see if that swings this one, but Boston for the most part, outside of Kristaps Porzingis, should be healthy. We'll see about Peyton Pritchard. He's dealing with a thumb injury. My guess is he tries to gut it out for this game. I mean, obviously one of the problems that the NBA has had for a long time now, but especially the last 5 to 10 years, is a lack of meaningful regular season games. I mean, this is about as big of a game as you're going to find in the first 2 months of any NBA season.
Well, and not only do you have the 2 teams at the top of the Eastern Conference and an undefeated Cavs team, but this is also an NBA Cup game, and this is in some ways an elimination game, especially if the Cavs take out the Celtics, since the Celtics already lost to the Hawks. If the Celtics lose, they are not moving on in this tournament for whatever that's worth to them.
Yeah.
I do have I have a futures bet on the Cavs to win the group and the Cavs to win the entire tournament. So I guess I could kind of hedge my bets tonight with the Celtics play, because if the Cavs win, then they should be good to take out the rest of the group.
Right, because keep in mind, the Celtics lost their first NBA Cup game to the Hawks. So they already have that one loss banked. Cleveland, this would probably be the only loss they take in group play. The other teams in that group are Atlanta, Chicago, and Washington. Wizards, by the way, are plus 40,000 to win the group. That will not be happening.
No.
But yeah, it's going to come down to this. I think we knew that right away. Even last Tuesday when group play started, you're circling Cavs-Celtics as the one that's going to decide this group. And Boston losing to Atlanta, if they win this game, it doesn't necessarily matter. They would, of course, hold the tiebreaker over Cleveland. But I'm excited, man. I'm excited for this, and should be another good night of basketball. A couple games where you're like, Charlotte, Brooklyn. Yeah, I'll watch it. I'm going to watch it. I'm not going to be excited for it. Denver, Memphis, it could be pretty ugly as well. I mean, the Nuggets, we'll see if they get Jokic back, but they've been playing some ugly basketball lately.
The Thunder Spurs becomes interesting. I like the Wembanyama Chet matchup, but of course we're not going to get the Chet side of it. But
I don't think Wembanyama's playing either. He's doubtful.
Oh, come on.
Yeah. So I would again, a game that'll make an appearance for a brief moment on the League Pass TV, but probably won't be locked in on that one.
So some big performances last night in the NBA as per usual. We'll come through a couple of the notables and the less notables. Nick Vucevic, 29 points, 12 boards, 3 blocks, 6 threes from Zach LaVine in that game. I really like watching this Bulls team.
Me too.
They are one of my favorite League Pass teams this year. Their tempo is high octane, and the Giddey addition, I think, has really unlocked things for the way that Billy Donovan wants this team to play.
Yeah, no question. I would not have had that on my list. Like Chicago has been a really depressing watch. I think over the last couple of years, it's been this team that seemingly, internally they think they're going to win like 45 to 50 games every year. And like anybody who watches basketball or analyzes basketball is like, this is very clearly a 38 win roster. And the Bulls are like, no, we're better than you think. And then, they just end up in the play-in zone every single year. And ultimately, they're probably there again. I mean, they're 6-9 right now, but they have been super fun to watch. I mean, they're one of the highest scoring teams, one of the highest paced teams in the NBA. They put up a ton of threes. They took 46 last night. They made 23 of them. I thought, Vucevic was incredible. Had a huge first half. He was a plus 24, completely outplayed Jalen Duren, who also had a big fantasy night, 15 and 22 for him with a couple of blocks. I know, I was talking to Shannon McCune, our Pistons ombudsman in the office last week, and he said, people are pretty disappointed so far with Jalen Duren in Detroit, but, Ivy's been great. Cade's off to a fantastic start. They finally have depth on this bench. Malik Beasley continues to hit a ton of threes for them. He was 5 of 14 from beyond the arc last night. And I mean, LaVine got off to a really bad start. I mean, I have him on a bunch of fantasy teams, so I'm tracking this one. He was 3 of 11, I believe, shooting going into the fourth quarter, and finished this game with 25 points and 7 threes.
Interesting that the resident Pistons fan upset with Jalen Duren. I really like the Pistons, obviously, they lost by 10 last night. That's going to happen. This isn't a great team, but I like the way the Pistons have been playing, and I think Jalen Duren is part of that. I like betting the Pistons, partially because usually they're undervalued because they've been bad for a while. Cade Cunningham is playing out of his mind, and I like a team that plays hard. I feel like this Pistons team, JB Bickerstaff has this team playing pretty hard right now. They just, they got shot out of the gym last night. You have 3 starters for the Bulls that had at least 5 threes. It's kind of hard to contend with.
Yeah, that's kind of the recipe, I think, for for teams like Chicago. It's just put up a bunch of threes. That's really your only hope. Not necessarily against a team like Detroit, but especially when you're playing a superior talent team, is just get up as many threes as you can, and hopefully you make 18 to 20, and you're going to hang around in a lot of games. And I think we're seeing that from some of these mid to bottom tier teams this year. We do have an Orlando Magic question, by the way, that I want to hit here, since you are an Orlando Magic expert. And the Magic won in Phoenix last night. Bang the under on that one. Sweat it out. Fantastic defense. I believe now, Brandon, 9 of the last 11 Orlando Magic games, at least one team involved has failed to hit 100 points. I mean, it's kind of a cheat code right now as far as the under game goes, even though these numbers keep getting lower and lower. But Christian asked, good morning, fellas. Is Anthony Black back?
I didn't know that he went away. I mean, this is you saw a little taste of this last season. He's playing with a lot more confidence, clearly worked on his 3 ball, which kind of opens everything else up. Career high in assists last night with 9, I believe he finished with. And the defense is there. That second unit's part of the reason why the Magic have been holding these teams under 100. A lot of the teams the Magic have gone up against have been depleted, and there might still be a star or 2 on the floor. But once they go to that second unit, the Magic are able to kind of flex a little bit. Jonathan Isaac, minute for minute, is one of the best 3 defensive players in the NBA. And Anthony, I say minute for minute because you never know
you're right.
how much you're going to get from him. But Anthony Black seems like that was kind of part of his repertoire coming out of Arkansas. And I would say yes, he is back. What you're seeing from Anthony Black doesn't feel like a blip. He kind of is what he is, and I mean that in a positive way. But I was on the under last night too, and just keep cashing those. When the Magic are going up against teams that have any sort of deficiency on offense, the Suns were on the second night of a back-to-back. They're without Beal, they're without Durant, they're without Nurkic. You take the under every time, or just take the team total under for the opponent. The Magic have this sort of smell blood in the water sort of feature about their defense right now, and you can cash in on that.
Well, both of these are low pace teams too. I mean, this game was played at 88.3 pace, which is exactly what we want in an under game. And you just, really it was more about fading the Suns, like you said, second night of a back-to-back, down 3 starters. I mean, they were starting basically 3 non-offensive players, and Oso Ighodaro, the rookie out of Marquette, actually played pretty well for them. He was 6 of 8 from the field at 12 points.
But if he had one of the best dunks of the night.
Yeah. I mean, he's super athletic, but if you've seen him shoot the ball, he has like 5 hitches in his shot. Like, 6 of 8 for him is like best case scenario, even if most of those are coming around the rim. Grayson Allen hit 4 threes off the bench. Josh Okogie was fine, but it's just not a team that has much firepower right now. I mean, they come out, they put up 22 in the first quarter. Both teams really went cold in the third, which is where we sealed this under, because Orlando had a huge second quarter. They put up 38. They're banging a bunch of threes. But ultimately, Phoenix shot 42% from the field, 29% from beyond the arc. So good to see that. Any other Magic notes while we're on this?
I don't want to get too braggy about the under. I was that was the biggest bet of the night, but I was also on Tyus Jones under 10.5 points. He hit the over midway through the first quarter.
Yeah,
so that's always a great feeling.
Yeah.
I would say you might have missed the boat on this, but I still think it's a decent wager to throw out there. Franz Wagner to win Most Improved Player of the Year. It was 50-1 as of 2 days ago. It's down to 16-1 right now at my local book. And he just picked up Eastern Conference Player of the Week honors. Paolo's not coming back until, at the earliest, you'll get him right before Christmas. And they'll probably, especially if Franz keeps playing like this and the team keeps winning, they'll just push that back. Maybe you don't get him back until the new year. That is certainly possible. The original diagnosis was an evaluation in 4 to 6 weeks. Not that he will necessarily be back in that time. Paolo said he's feeling fine, but if Franz continues to play like this, he's a shoo-in for the All-Star game, and that's usually one of the signifiers for you will be in the running for Most Improved Player. Jalen Williams of OKC, Dyson Daniels, of course. Like, those guys are going to be up there, but Franz will be, especially if you bet on a book that allows cash outs early, they send you the offer so that you buy out. I think it's an investment to make. Even if you only make a few bucks on it a couple months from now, that number is only going to get shorter.
Are we sure he's a shoo-in for the All-Star game? I'm not saying you're wrong, but shoo-in? I mean, there's a lot of competition right now in the Eastern Conference. Like, the Cavs are getting at least 2, maybe 3. Boston's getting at least 2. I think, Towns and Brunson, in terms of popularity, maybe have an advantage over Wagner. Trae Young. Miami's got, Butler and/or Adebayo. Tyler Hero's played well. Cade Cunningham feels like he could make it. Halliburton, LaMelo, Dame, Giannis.
I mean, Halliburton hasn't really been great so far this year. You're talking about the best player who has stepped up his game in a big way on the 3rd best team in the Eastern Conference. I would hope that that's good enough for a shoo-in.
I hope so too.
But Paolo has to be out of the way in order for it to be a shoo-in. Yeah. If it's Franz's team and they continue to win games like this, he'll be a shoo-in. Paolo coming back, that'll steal some votes, whether that's from the coaches or from fans, because Paolo's the more popular player. So he's the
games he plays though. I don't know. Like, if he only plays 20 games before the All-Star break, I think that might rule him out.
It's very possible. But his averages, if you look at his averages because of what he was doing before he got hurt, that's going to help to buoy things. But those guys weren't going to get in based on fan vote anyway, so that should curry favor for Franz. That's more of like the upper echelon guys. The 76ers are flat out depressing. They're 2-11 on the season. They still haven't won a game in regulation, by the way. But it does seem like they hit on the number 16 pick in the draft. Jared McCain, I heard you and Alex talking about this on yesterday's podcast. One of the smoothest jumpers in the league. He had another 4 threes last night. I bid 95. It was somewhere in the range of $70 to $90 in a league, my big money league, where the budget is $1,000 going into the season. And I lost out on Jared McCain. He went for 117.
Jeez.
Wild.
Yeah, he went for 77 in our stake league, which is out of $100 budget. Nobody else, I think, bid ahead of I think the next highest bid was like 25. Our good pal DJ Trainer, who he's had some injuries in that league, he needs them more than anybody. So I understand why he went all in. He's been on a ridiculous run, man. I mean, this is now 5 straight 20-plus point games for McCain. He's averaging 26.6 points over his last 5. He's given you a handful of assists. He had 10 assists, over the last week against Cleveland. He's given you a couple steals here and there. Obviously, the threes have been huge. He's got at least 4 made threes in each of those games. He's getting to the line, and he's been super efficient there as well. Really, though, you're just chasing the points and the threes. And I part of the reason that I didn't go higher on McCain, I put in what I would call a keep him honest bid, where it's I think I put 17 or $19. And it's if I get him, great. I'm not going to spend half to 3/4 of my budget on this guy because I think it's very likely that Embiid and Paul George are still missing games on and off the entire year. But this run for Jared McCain clearly coincides with Tyrese Maxey being out of the lineup, and Tyrese Maxey is not dealing with a multi-month injury. He could be back as soon as later this week, maybe even tomorrow night when they play at Memphis. They are home for Brooklyn on Friday, and then they get the Clippers on Sunday. He's back to doing on-court work, so this has been a really fun run. I mean, McCain has played well enough that obviously he's going to be in the rotation, but what we've seen over the last week and a half, that's the absolute ceiling. And I think as long as Maxey's out there, you can't just expect this to continue at this level.
I mean, they would be foolish to not give him heavy minutes. They lack an offensive punch right now, and that gets better with Tyrese Maxey. But Paul George is giving them not what they signed up for. So that's definitely part of the equation.
I mean, Embiid too. I know Embiid was battling through an illness last night, but I think the whole idea with Embiid is that, okay, maybe he only plays 55, 60 games, but man, he's going to be so dominant when he's out there. It's he's still worth, a high pick in fantasy. He still went for a high dollar value in all the auctions that I did because, you're just thinking, let's say he plays 60 games. He could still be the 10th best player because the numbers are going to be so overwhelming. I mean, he's played 3 games now this year. He's not played more than 33 minutes in any of those games. He's averaging 15 and 6 so far. It's whenever we've seen Embiid, he has not looked like Embiid.
No, he has not. I mean, we haven't seen a lot of him, but he still looks like summer Embiid, which was not the best version of himself. Right. I think it was Bill Simmons who said that Embiid is in his Shaqtus phase, which I thought was hilarious. It's probably a little over the top, but it was.
Shaq was 37 when he was in his Shaqtus phase.
Embiid looks like he's 37 right now. It's not that far off for the moment, but I think most of us expect him to get it together. Last one from last night, RJ Barrett continues his torrid pace in this year's campaign. 3 straight games with 20 or more, getting you a ton of assists as well. Is this sustainable? With what you're seeing from RJ, he'd be another most improved guy, a guy that would be on that list.
I think it's borderline sustainable because, RJ Barrett was really good after the trade last year from New York. And it's not a surprise that when you feed him minutes and you feed him shots, he's going to be productive. That's kind of the player that he's always been. It's just a matter of the efficiency, right? I think it's easy to look at the scoring numbers and say, man, he's putting up 23 a game. He's giving you 6.5 rebounds, 6.5 assists. The counting stats are fantastic. Still not really giving you anything defensively. The 3-point volume tends to come and go. He's hitting about 2 threes per game, shooting 42% from the field, 69% at the line. So in points leagues, it's been fantastic. In category leagues, he probably ranks a lot lower than you might think. In 8-cat leagues where you don't factor in turnovers, and he is a high turnover player. So taking that out of the equation, he's the 88th best player per game this year. So it's the lack of the defensive stats and then the drag on the percentages. But yeah, in points leagues, he's been great. Obviously, they're still without Quickly. They're also without Barnes. So it's not quite a McCain situation where I think there will be a big drop-off when Maxey's back. But once they get Barnes and Quickly back healthy, Barrett's not going to be routinely giving you 30 to 35.
Real quick note on you asked me any more notes on the Magic. There was something that I wanted to mention. I was, of course, every night tracking the whereabouts of Wendell Carter Jr., and there was a change in his injury status yesterday. You may have noticed this. He was upgraded to doubtful for the first time since he's been out.
Great.
And then they announced him as out, but he hadn't been doubtful yet since he'd been out. So he could be getting closer to back to action if they felt the need to change that designation. With that said, I think especially after last night, 17 points, 10 rebounds, 2 blocked shots, a great time to sell high on Goga Bitadze if you have someone in your league that's not paying attention, because I think Carter's coming back soon.
Yeah. I think this is probably the final week where you're at least comfortable starting Bitadze. I mean, he's been really good. 17, 10, and 2 last night, and it is a 4-game week for Orlando. So I think this after this week, maybe it gets a little bit dicier. I also think the next Wendell Carter injury is probably right around the corner. So if you're in a deeper league, like I play in a lot of 14, 16 teamers. I don't really mind holding Bitadze just because Wendell Carter. This is not the first time we've been down this road. And this is every single year we go through this with this guy.
Very, very true. We've got 5 buy or sell candidates and your questions right around the corner. But first, a word from Nick and DraftKings Pick 6.
Here at RotoWire, we're proud to be partnered up with DraftKings Pick 6 this NBA season. Think your team will score more than 100 points tonight? How about your favorite point guard making more than 4 3-pointers? Check out DraftKings Pick 6, the newest way to play fantasy basketball and win cash with DraftKings. Here's how it works. All you got to do is pick 2 to 6 players of the same sport and choose if they'll have more or less of a given stat. So for hoops, we're talking points, assists, rebounds, etc. Lock in those picks, compete against opponents for your shot at huge cash prizes. Go download the new DraftKings Pick 6 app right now and use our code ROTOPICK, ROTOPICK. That's code ROTOPICK for new Pick 6 customers. Play $5, get $50 in Pick 6 credits guaranteed. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org in Connecticut. Must be 18 plus. Age and eligibility restrictions vary by jurisdiction. Pick 6 not available everywhere, including New York and Ontario. Void where prohibited. 1 per new customer. Bonus awarded as non-withdrawable Pick 6 credits that expire in 30 days. Limited time offer. See terms at pick6.draftkings.com/promos.
Great stuff as always by Nick Whalen. A quick question off of our comment section, and we'll get to a bunch of these coming up in just a couple of minutes. Drop RJ Barrett for Dyson Daniels. What that I would like to have both of them. Can we find a way to get both? Well, I guess you have to figure out a way to roster Dyson Daniels. This guy is a steal machine right now. Hard to find anybody else that's doing what he's doing.
He's a steal machine. He's a blocks machine. I mean, he had no steals last night, but he did have 4 blocks, including what was essentially a walk-off block on a De'Aaron Fox field goal attempt at the buzzer to seal the win for Atlanta. This is about the size of your league, I guess. Like, how many teams are you in where both of these guys don't need to be rostered? If you're in a category-based league, I think what Daniels gives you is so unique and valuable that I would prefer that side of it. I mean, like the steals, especially for one, I mean, getting blocks out of a guy like him, like that's almost a bonus. And he's a great shot blocker for his size and position, but he is a cheat code in terms of steals. I mean, he's lapping the field in terms of steals. The deflections numbers back this up. Like, it's not fluky at all. We have enough of a sample now that I think he's just going to kind of continue doing this for the most part. He's going to keep playing a ton of minutes. I know they're going to get Bogdanović back at some point in the next few weeks, and maybe that does impact his role a little bit, but this team needs defense. Like, he's like their only decent wing guard defender. So I don't really worry too much about the minutes. So to me, it's about the format that you're playing in. In a points league, maybe Barrett makes more sense. In a category league, I would value what Daniels gives you.
Let's rattle through these buy, sell, or hold candidates, and we'll get back to a slew of your questions. Kawhi Leonard, still out indefinitely. Should you be getting what you can for him and cutting bait now, or do you have to hold?
I mean, I would survey the market, I suppose. I don't know what you're really going to be able to get for Kawhi. Maybe there's some sort of Kawhi optimist out there in your league. Maybe maybe you're in a fantasy league with Uncle Dennis and you could, maybe sell Kawhi to him. But I don't know, man. I mean, I know there's been some progression. They said yesterday, he's taken part in shooting drills. We'll see. It's just, he's not going to play back-to-backs. I think especially if you're in a weekly lineups league, I would try to cut bait. I really would, because there's just not going to be that many weeks where you feel comfortable throwing him in there. It's like how many 4-game weeks without a back-to-back can you say confidently Kawhi Leonard will play in all these games? Every 4-game week could become a 3-game week. Every 3-game week could become a 2-game week. There's a reason that I avoided him, and I think a lot of people did this year. And the discount was enough. It's not like you had to take him with like the 30th overall pick. In a lot of drafts, he was going late enough that I totally understand the risk reward proposition. But if you could get anybody decent, anybody who's a consistent top 100 guy, or even add some depth, I would do that, because playing the waiting game with him, I don't know that it's going to pay off like it has in years past.
Jalen Duren, player on a bad team, rebounding machine. He blocks shots. Mm-hmm. I know that Shannon not excited about what Jalen Duren bringing to the table, but are we into it long term?
Yeah, I'm still pro Jalen Duren. I think Shannon's complaints were more real life than they were fantasy. Although the big thing with Jalen Duren this year is that the free throw percentage has fallen off a cliff. Still relatively small sample. He's only played 14 games. It's only taken about 2.5 per game, but he was a 79% free throw shooter last year, which is a pretty big boost in category leagues for a center. That's great. He's at 51% this season, so that's a concern, but he is shooting 75% from the field. After last night, 3 blocks, he's up over 1 block per game. That was kind of a big question mark for him, is you're going to get the efficient scoring, you're going to get the high volume rebounds, but can he give you at least a block, closer to a block and a half per game? We'll see. But yeah, I'm holding Jalen Duren for now. You'd like to see the minutes increase. He's had some foul issues lately that have kind of sent his minutes all over the place, but when he's not in foul trouble, I think the ceiling games like we saw last night against Chicago, 15 points, 22 rebounds, 3 assists, 2 blocks. That's not going to be every night, but those are the type of games he's very capable of.
Ty Jerome of the Cavs, more under the radar player, plays about 18 a night, but he's ultra efficient from 3. 3rd highest percentage on the season from long range at 54%. Are you in or out?
I probably more close to out than in with him. He's like the poor man's Peyton Pritchard, I guess, in some ways. And it's like, if you hit the right week or the right game, such as Charlotte on Sunday when he put up 24 points and 4 threes with 8 assists, that's all well and good. Donovan Mitchell also didn't play in that game. The Cavs actually have a bunch of, random role players who are either out for semi-long term or are just kind of missing games on and off. Like Karis LeVert's been out, Sam Merrill's been out, Isaac Okoro is banged up right now, Dean Wade, Max Strus. Strus is the big one. He'll probably be back in about 2 weeks. And once he's back in the mix, along with those other names, then Ty Jerome probably becomes marginalized. So, in a 16-team league, yeah, you could stream him in on a 4-game week. But I think once those guys are back, then he's probably out of that conversation.
Where are we at with Josh Hart? Not exactly the same rebounder that he was last season. You're not getting the same double-digit outputs night after night. Maybe that wasn't sustainable. What we saw from Josh Hart at the end of last season, and he doesn't do much in the way of defense. So is he a buy, sell, or hold guy?
Honestly, I think he's a hold more than anything, maybe a buy. He had a terrible preseason, which you never want to read too much into, but I mean, he was just outright bad in like every area in the preseason, and that has been completely erased. I mean, his numbers are up across the board compared to last year in every meaningful category. He's actually playing 4 more minutes per game so far this year than he was last season. And obviously at the end of last year when they had some injuries, he started going crazy, but he's averaging 14 points right now, which is like just off of his career high, 8.9 rebounds per game, up from 8.3 last year, 5.9 assists. That has been the big surprise. Like Josh Hart has always been a, 3-4 assist type of guy. I mean, every single night, it feels like he's given you 6, 7, 8 over the last couple of weeks. Defensive stats, not great. He's going to be close to a steal per game guy. He's not really going to give you blocks, but he's shooting 58% from the field. Now that's going to come down at some point. He's at 33% from 3, but all of his 2-point attempts are basically layups. There's a reason that he's not shooting that well from 3, but is still at almost 60% from the field. So I've actually been really impressed with him. This is a very shallow Knicks team. The way they've built this team, they don't have the kind of bench that they've had in years past. So I actually think Josh Hart is off to a great start relative to what I expected.
Right. I guess it comes down to exactly that, expectations. Were you expecting the Josh Hart you got at the end of last season, or were you expecting career Josh Hart? And in that case, he's delivering. Let's wrap this portion with Paul George. One game of 20 or more this season. He's shooting 39% from the field and 28% from three-point range, just killing you in those areas. I think he's part of the reason why you will continue to see Jared McCain in the lineup. What do we do with Paul George?
Yeah, it's 28% from three is tough. I would say if you can sell him, obviously look into it. I don't know what you're necessarily going to be able to get. Maybe you target another struggling star, but I wouldn't be trying to take the major loss on that. Like I wouldn't sell him for like the 85th ranked player right now. I think there's nowhere to go but up for Paul George. And it's not, to me, it's not like a Lauri Markkanen situation where like Markkanen is off to a similarly bad start. He's also like fifth on his own team in usage. I know the Sixers have been terrible, but at some point I think they'll start to climb their way back in Eastern Conference, whereas I think Utah is just kind of a team right now, and I don't really want a piece of that. So I think you just kind of have to see it through right now with Paul George. I mean, obviously came into the year injured, still working his way back in. I think he's going to end up being fine. I would say that this will hopefully be like the worst 2-week stretch of his season.
Yeah, might need to work off of off of Joel Embiid, who also has not been in his best form, and maybe they'll be able to get that going together. Time for your questions. The bounce, where we bounce around your questions in the comments section, this one's from Alan. Is Rui Hachimura good for a 9-cat 14-team league?
Let's start with Rui Hachimura good. Players in the NBA, but he's been pretty decent this year. He's played 10 games. He's missed the last couple. He's averaging 13 points, 6 rebounds, 1.6 assists, 1.8 threes. He is shooting it really well from three so far. He's at 50%, not super high volume. I mean, he's in a 14-teamer. He's borderline. He's probably should be rostered. I wouldn't be starting him most weeks, hopefully, unless it's really deep starting lineups or something like that. On a 4-game week, you could probably get away with it. But the 18 points, 9 rebounds, 2 threes games are usually offset the next night by like 7 points and 3 rebounds. So I don't know. He's ultimately super streaky. There are some nights where you're like, man, the Lakers stole this guy. What a steal! What a great rotation player. There are other nights where he still looks completely lost. So I'm kind of out on Hachimura, but I know a lot of people like him.
All right, let's move to Raph, who said that my friend sent me a trade, including sending him sending Anthony Edwards for Julius Randle and Jordan Poole, seeing how the Wizards are playing, thinking of accepting. Your thoughts on that? So his friend is sending Anthony Edwards, and he has to give up Julius Randle and Jordan Poole. A trade between friends, always dicey.
Yeah. Man, that's interesting. So Randle and Poole for Anthony Edwards. I mean, Randle, he's been doing Randle things. He's at like 22, 7 and 4. Field goal percentage has been pretty good. Free throw percentage has been pretty good. You never know what you're going to get there.
I know you've been pretty high on what Poole's done this year.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, Poole's been awesome, and he's a top 25 guy, and I think what he's doing is fairly sustainable. The percentages are way up compared to last year. That's the big thing, but he's always going to be a great free throw shooter. We'll see if the field goal percentage can hang in that 45, 46 range as opposed to the lower 40s. He's also giving you 2 steals per game. He's giving you assists. He's giving you the high volume threes. This is closer than it should be. I think coming into the year, you would be like, you absolutely want the Edwards side of this. It kind of depends on your depth needs. This is a pretty fair trade. For me, I think I might take the Randle Poole side of this, as crazy as that sounds. Both of those guys are really good. I think in a points league combined, Randle and Poole are certainly going to give you more than Edwards.
All right, so don't accept the deal is what I'm getting from Nick. Serva says, I traded Nick Vucevic, RJ Barrett, and Darius Garland for James Harden and Lauri Markkanen in a 10-team points league. What do you think? They gave up 3 to get 2. Yeah. Those 2 are theoretically better, but love what you saw from Vooch last night. Yeah. Garland should give you pretty consistent production, and RJ Barrett's hot. I don't know if I like giving up those guys, but I know you're big on Harden, so I'm curious to see what you say.
Yeah, I love Harden. I mean, Harden's the best player in the deal, but it's not as much of a runaway as you would think. I mean, Barrett's averaging right now like 41 fantasy points per game. Vucevic is averaging 40. Garland is averaging 37. Now, we talked about Barrett earlier. I do think there's a pretty good chance that he regresses, once Barnes and quickly are back, but he's still going to be a good player. Like, he's still going to be starting. He's still going to get his numbers. He's still going to be high volume. As much as I love Harden, I don't know, man. Like, Markkanen is clearly the worst player in the deal, at least as far as how they've played so far. I have concerns about a potential shutdown for him later in the year. He's not going to get traded. We know that. That's not really possible since he re-signed. But the Jazz are going nowhere. Like, this is a really bad team in the Western Conference. I think it's pretty clear that they're going to be in the Cooper Flag sweepstakes at some point. So I think I like the three-man side of this one. I don't know if I would have made that deal.
I always like when our listeners answer each other's questions. So we had one that said, Terry Rozier on my waiver wire, worth the pickup. Follow-up comment, Rozier is a bum.
Rozier is a bum, dude. I traded for him and he immediately became a bum. I got off of Buddy Hield. It was I think we talked about it on the show. Like, I was getting rid of Markkanen and I was just like, I can't have Markkanen on my roster anymore. So I traded Markkanen and Hield for Gobert, Rozier, and Jaden McDaniels. And, Buddy Hield predictably has regressed, but Terry Rozier has also been just awful over the last few weeks. Like, I checked the box score, I'm watching the game, and it's like he starts every game like 1 of 7 from the field somehow. The steals have started to dry up. Like, he still gives you 4 or 5 rebounds and assists every night. So there's a baseline there, but he's not even taking that many shots. Like, Tyler Hero's been so high usage. Jimmy Butler came back and scored 30 last night. Obviously, you got Bam in that lineup. And now Rozier, is banged up and they're on a 2-game week. So it's been disappointing. He's definitely a bum. In my 16-team league, I'm still holding him and unfortunately starting him most weeks. But yeah, it's been pretty disappointing.
But bum-like qualities from Terry Rozier. I don't think he is exactly what the Heat bargained for when they made the move to get him. They thought that was a game changer. Chris asked, would you keep Jalen Suggs or trade him? I thought that we were going to get a bigger offensive output from Jalen. Not that that's necessarily all you're looking for from Jalen Suggs when Paolo went out. It feels to me like he works better off of Paolo. And I also think he's forcing it because he wants to be the second option, but he's just not a natural scorer. And we saw the 3-pointers get better last year. This month, 22% from 3-point range. In my opinion, his value is going to increase when Paolo comes back, but if you wanted to move off of him now, I think I understand. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, ironically, you take Paolo Banchero, the highest usage player on the team, out of the mix, and Suggs has been dramatically worse. Was clearly shooting above his level those first few games of the year where he's hitting, I think he had like back-to-back 5, 6 3-pointer games, and then he went on a terrible run, which is still continuing. He was 2 of 7 last night. Like you said, 22% from 3 over his last 10 games. Yeah, the steals and blocks are nice, especially getting those, getting blocks from a guard. He's still giving you over 1 steal, over 1 block. So I wouldn't, certainly wouldn't be dropping him. But yeah, if you could trade him and get somebody who's a little bit more consistent, if you want more offensive production, I think that's totally reasonable.
All right, Kevin asks. Oh, that's not lighting up. I don't know. Well, that is not working. I'll just read the question. Kevin wants to know, I have Chet in a 12-team category league. There you go. You were able to do it. Should I hold on to him or trade him for a lesser player?
Good question. Prescient question. As always, it depends on who you could get. Maybe you can get a package of players. If you could do a 1-for-1, I still think it has to be a pretty good player. I wouldn't just be accepting a guy who's, I'm trying to find him an example here. Like, I wouldn't trade him for like Tobias Harris or somebody like that, because you got to keep in mind just how insanely good Chet has been this season, even in a small sample. But the advantage that he was giving you defensively, volume rebounding as well. He was at 3 blocks per game before the injury. The thing with Chet is, they gave us a timetable of 8 to 10 weeks. And that was we will give you a return to play protocol in 8 to 10 weeks. It's not that he's going to be back in 8 to 10 weeks. So I I was talking about this with Alex last week. He's as clued in as anybody as these injuries go. And, he and I have been doing this for a decade. You kind of get a sense for how things like this tend to play out. If he could return, let's say in like late January, do you just take it through the All-Star break? OKC should be able to tread water without him in the West. They'll be getting Hartenstein back in a week or two. I think that'll really help. I think there's a pretty good chance that we don't see Holmgren until after the break, in which case you're probably better off trading him. Even if he comes back and plays really well for those final games, like you're going to take more of a loss not having him in your lineup for 2.5 months. So I would at least be floating some offers out there for Chet Holmgren, especially if you're in the middle to bottom part of your league. Like maybe try to sell him to one of the best teams that's doing well. They don't necessarily need any immediate production, and see what you can get in return. So I think that's a fair question, and I would look to deal him because I'm pretty pessimistic when it comes to his timeline.
Or, I mean, could you just wait? If you were to wait a month to deal him, then his value would theoretically increase because the person that's trading for him would think I'm a month closer to getting him.
In theory,
the injury is still so fresh.
True. I mean, it depends on what the update is. If we get an update in a month that he's not going to be back till March, then it's like, oh man, maybe I should have traded him when it looked like he was coming back in January. So it's kind of a dicey game to play. But yeah, you don't have to do it right now. Like you said, the closer you get to the return date, in theory, the more you should be able to get for him. But that's also more zeros that you're taking when you're not getting any production out of that spot in your lineup. So I think it's justifiable. I think he's going to miss enough time that if you can get somebody who you're confident will play 70 plus games, it's probably worth it.
Let's move to this one. It says, my friend wants to trade Wemby and LaMelo for my Devin Booker and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. That's a blockbuster right there. Wants to trade. Yeah, I think I would do that.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, Booker's a very good player. He is not in the same tier fantasy-wise as Wembanyama and LaMelo. SGA obviously is a top 10 guy. LaMelo's been a top 10 guy so far this season. So to me, this is more so, do you think LaMelo's going to get hurt? Do you think LaMelo is going to regress? Is he going to get suspended for just like being an idiot in post-game press conferences at some point? Maybe. I don't know, man. I think I would take the Wemby LaMelo side of this. I mean, it's a fair deal, but you're trading 2 top 10 guys for 1 top 10 guy and like a top 30 to 40 guy. So I don't know. I'd rather hold Wemby and LaMelo.
Yeah, the reasoning here was that they think Booker is going to be much better in the future. So I think some concern that LaMelo is going to fall off. Yeah. All of that would just be injury related. Hard to predict that stuff, but his track record is not sterling. This one says, are you guys high on Ausar Thompson this year? Seems like the coaches like him. Yeah, I'm very high on him. I'm still holding him on an IR spot, but no update on when he's going to be available. So I'm just kind of sitting and waiting.
Yeah, he's at least been cleared, which is good. It seems like he's now in the ramp-up process. I'm pretty high on him as well, specifically in leagues where you're not maybe worried about the field goal and the free throw percentage and the lack of threes. The only thing is, I mean, the Pistons have a lot more depth than they did last year. It's like all of a sudden he's got to compete with Tim Hardaway and Malik Beasley and Ron Holland, Simone Fontecchio. There is more competition for minutes than you would like. So I don't necessarily see Ausar, given the lack of 3-point shooting. Like I don't see him walking into like 30 minutes per game when he's back.
All right, let's wrap with this. You have a best bet for tonight? Is there anything that you've already invested in?
Nothing that I've already played, but I will be getting some plays out there. You can find all my plays on our site. We do a daily gambling article, and then over at Bookies Plus as well, our affiliate site, bookies.com. You can track all of our picks, NBA and NFL from me. We scratched and clawed our way to a 2-2 NFL week, Brandon. Hit a preposterous under on the Falcons-Broncos game, which was at 44.5 was the number. And the total was sitting at 44 for the entire fourth quarter. And thank God the Atlanta Falcons made no effort to score whatsoever late in that game. Anyway, for tonight, I mean, I would look at OKC. I know it's a big number. It's at 9.5 right now. I don't think Wembanyama is going to play for San Antonio. I mean, without him, they don't have a whole lot, especially defensively. I know Devin Vassell has been good for them, but I think that should be a pretty good spot for the Thunder to jump on them early. A game like that, and there are a few of those tonight, I like to look at, first half, first quarter lines, OKC -5 first half, maybe the Lakers -6 at home in the first half against the Utah Jazz. Kind of insulate yourself from a potential backdoor cover.
It's great advice. I like LeBron over 32.5 points plus rebounds. He got off the triple-double run on Saturday, but the Jazz should offer little resistance, and you have a couple of days rest for an older player. I'll leave assists out of it just because I think the number's a little bit too high when you get the PRA in there, but points and rebounds, 32.5 feels reasonable.
Yeah. No Walker Kessler tonight, too, for the Utah Jazz.
That's
so already not a great rebounding team, and now you take your best big man out of there. So it could be a good Anthony Davis spot, too.
And I think I haven't bet it yet, but I think I'm going to end up on a little sprinkle, half unit play on the Celtics bought up to -10. I think they could smash the Cavs tonight. That'll do it for us today on the RotoWire Fantasy Basketball Podcast presented by DraftKings Pick 6. I've been your host, Brandon Kravitz. He's Nick Whalen, and we'll see you next time.